We are different. Society should aspire to be more like us.
Be part of the first class. Get energized. Get outside.
Hold on, guys. It's gonna get bumpy.
And get moving. Experience the power of physical activity. Join the movement at actionheroalliance.com.
Hello and welcome back to Road to Recovery, the show that offers hope and help and wholeness and healing for those who are struggling with addiction. You're on this path or this trip, and you're hoping to get help, to feel better, to interact better in your life and in the life of your loved ones. Or maybe you have a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker who is struggling with addiction. This program is for you today. It's brought to you in part by the Recovery Center here in Lancaster. They're at 201 South Columbus Street. They can be reached at 740-687-4500. I'm your co-host, Steve Rao, with the Executive Director of the Recovery Center, Tricia Saunders. Welcome back to the Road to Recovery.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, hey,
Let me come back.
I love having you on this program. You are definitely the brains of the outfit. So thank you for the work that you're doing. A new location, expanded coverage area, expanded services. One of the other things you've done is actually shortened the time that people need to wait for services.
Sure
Is that
have.
right?
Yes, we have. We were at a year-long wait list for a while, and now
Yeah.
we're down to getting people in that week. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's not enough funding to give everybody all of the services that they need, but
Sure.
we are working at that too. So.
But you can get them started on the road to recovery,
yes,
right?
that's right. We
Yeah.
can, and we're actually seeing our show rate is increasing now that we're in a better
Yeah.
location. So I'm very pleased about that.
Wonderful, and some exciting news. The Pearl House ground is being broken, and that's going to happen and going to help even more families
That's
and
right.
children as
Yes.
well.
Yes, we're really working on that and what the service matrix is going to be, you know, how people are going to be involved with a lot of services and all of that. So I think it's very exciting and opportunity to really help people get grounded and become healthy, productive citizens.
Yeah, it really is so important. Again, so many people in our community that want to come alongside and help, and our guest today is one of those such people. Would you introduce our guest today?
Sure. I think our guest today is another honorable person, somebody that I have a great amount of respect for, who does a wonderful job in our community, and that is Chief Dave Bailey. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tricia. Thanks for that introduction. Steve, thanks for having me.
It's a privilege and a pleasure to have you joining us on the road to recovery. We'd like to learn a little bit about your past. You can keep all of the negative stuff out if you want, or you can add it. It doesn't matter to me. But where are you from originally?
Without the negative stuff, it isn't worth hearing. Actually, I was born in West Virginia. I'm
Okay.
a proud mountaineer. Then lived in Columbus, and then made my home in Lancaster. So Central Ohio and West Virginia for a while.
Very good. How did you get involved in police work?
I originally, when I was at Ohio State University, I thought I was going to be a school teacher. At that time, school teaching unfortunately did not command the salary it deserved. It's much better today. And I thought, you know, I think I'll take some police tests. I was always interested in that. And Lancaster called me, and I took the job and been very happy ever since.
Very good. So you started out as a patrolman, is that
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Right here in the Lancaster Police Force.
Absolutely.
And how long were you a patrolman and then go through the advancement process?
I'm going to try to compress this a little bit because it really isn't that interesting. But I started in 1979 and immediately went to the night shift, the 11 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning shift. Lancaster was a different community then, not quite as busy as it is now. Spent some time in the patrol bureau, as we call it, then off to the detective bureau for quite a few years. A lot of experience there, a lot of interesting things in terms of getting involved in high-profile cases. Then I did something kind of unusual. For about 4 years, I left the department and went to Columbus Children's Hospital. I was the assistant security and parking and risk management director. That was an interesting experience, but frankly, it did not fulfill my inner need for law enforcement. I came back to the department and I started through the ranks, and in 2007 became the chief, and I'm very lucky to have that job, and I'm very proud to have that job.
Well, I got to tell you, your teacher leanings still are alive and well. You taught me what taser means just a couple of years ago, and so I still remember it. So your ability to teach is very good.
And I hope you're going to share that, Steve.
Thomas A. Swift's electronic rifle. He's the guy that invented the taser. Is that right?
Exactly. That's what it was named for. Very
I passed the test. I guess I get an A
can remember. I got to work on
yeah,
that.
yeah, that's wonderful.
Well done.
So you obviously in your line of work, especially as the chief, there's still some teaching that goes on, isn't there?
There is indeed, and there's some that, there's a lot of learning for me as well. I can always learn something from the things we encounter from the officers, and it's a constant education process.
One of the things we like to ask law enforcement is, especially somebody like yourself who's been here for quite a long time, since 1979, there have been a lot of changes. You alluded to that. What are some of those changes you've experienced from 1979 to now?
I think that I'd like to start off, Steve, with a reminder that we do live in a safe community. There is a little bit of mythology out there about how dangerous and how bad Lancaster really is, but I think the reality is, and it's good to bring this home again, we do live in a safe community. You can walk the streets. You can go out and about with your family. We do have more crime than we once did. We're a bigger community. We're closer in many ways to Columbus in terms of our relationship to Columbus, plus the two cities seem to be getting closer geographically. The world has changed. I mean, there is more disorder, but nonetheless, we preserve a pretty nice lifestyle here. But having said all that, when I started on the department, there was a Mayberry-like aspect to Lancaster. There truly was. And on the night shift, it could be pretty quiet sometimes. That has changed. People do call the police more. Last year, for example, I should say 2011, because I don't have the 12 statistics ready yet, but
Sure.
2011 approaching 65,000 calls for police service in this small city. So not all those things were serious. I'm not implying that those were all serious crimes.
Sure.
But to the people who called, they were very important things, and they needed our service. So it has gotten a lot busier.
And I'm glad you brought out the point that we really are in a safe community. We've talked about that before on the show, that when the Opiate Task Force began, we had some data and information that most other communities didn't have. And when word about that information got out, people thought we had like the third worst drug problem in the nation. And really, our problems are only average maybe in the state. So we are in a good place overall, and very thankful for that. We have good police response too.
Thank you. Tricia's 100% right. When this data started flowing out of the Opiate Task Force, the intention was very good. The intention was to inform the public, educate folks, to let them know that we do have a problem, be transparent about it. Unfortunately, some of the data got sort of maybe turned into a little bit of a fishing story. The story got a little bit bigger.
Yeah, right.
And it was transmitted by people who were repeating things that they weren't 100% sure of. I don't think there was any bad intent there, but nonetheless,
Sure.
the story grew. As Tricia said, the next thing you know, we were one of the worst cities in the country, and we all know that that isn't true. And to counter this argument, I say to people, do you honestly believe that the city of Lancaster has more crime than the city of Columbus? And everybody
Right.
says, of course not. So.
Or Chicago, or LA, or New York City, or
Exactly.
yeah, perspective. Thank you for the perspective. Now, certainly we've seen an increase. You have in the recovery center in people needing services, but yet, would you agree that most people in Lancaster and Fairfield County are not abusing drugs?
Yes, that is very true. And even with our youth, we were seeing the youth use of drugs increasing, and now it's decreasing again. And I do want to point out, I have mentioned that we had a year-long wait list at the recovery center, which was horrendous, but it was somewhat because of the drug use was increasing, but largely we had lost 35% of our funding. So that had a major factor,
So these things are coming together and
Yes.
making a difference.
Yes.
Chief, you might recall a prayer service that was held at the Lancaster Church of the United Brethren in Christ, I believe in January of 2010. I was asked to share a little bit there. About 5 minutes before it started, you came in the room and stood next to me. We exchanged pleasantries, and then you said something to me. Do you recall what you said to me at that meeting? I will remind you. You said to me, what did you say to me?
I think I told you that I thought at the end of the day that that prayer service and that appealing to God was going to be one of the most effective strategies to deal with the problem, and I still believe that.
That's exactly what you said to me. And I recall I chuckled a little bit and I said, yeah, you know what, I think you might be right. And you said, no, Steve, I'm serious about this. I think this is a very important cog in the wheel for change. You shared with me later, after that meeting, there were about 300 people at that meeting, you went back to the office, and what did you share with your team there?
I basically told everyone that, anyone who would listen, that was an uplifting experience for me. That kind of recharged my battery to sort of stay in the fight, and I shared that with them and told them that if they were so inclined, that they too should turn to the higher power to help deal with this problem.
Yeah, very good. And I tell you, since that moment, there has been a definite increase in the amount of focus on this need, even from the police side of things. The Fairfield-Hocking Major Crimes Unit, the Lancaster Police Department, assists in that, do they not?
We do. You know, there's kind of three components. I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but the police are just we're just part of the team. We're really not the sole line of defense against the opiate problem. Really, you have the education or prevention initiatives, very important. Then, of course, treatment, which Tricia represents,
Correct.
Extremely important. Then you have enforcement. And now you're talking about some of the specialty enforcement activities we engage in. The Major Crimes Unit, which does have 2 Lancaster officers on it. The Fairfield County Sheriff's Office operates the SCRAP team, which is a street-level interdiction unit. We have now 2 Lancaster police officers serving on that team. So there's a lot of collaboration on the law enforcement side, just as there's a lot of collaboration on the treatment side, and as well as prevention and education. All 3 disciplines, all 3 groups are working together. I think that's why you're seeing an improvement. It's not a huge improvement, but it's a start.
No question about that. SCRAP stands for what?
Street Crime Reduction and Apprehension Program.
Very good.
What does TASER stand for?
I think I still remember. And it's a very important piece. Now, we talk about hope and wholeness and healing, and you say, wait a minute, you've got the police chief here who's arresting all kinds of people for crimes related to drugs and alcohol and the addiction, but your heart is really not just apprehend people and throw them in jail. You really want to see people get better.
Right, and let's talk about what the target is for us. Law enforcement, it's not going to really do us a lot of good to pursue individuals who are struggling with addiction, who have used drugs and who are now incapacitated. We find those people. That's not a statistic we're seeking. We're looking for the people who, in a systematic, organized manner, import dangerous drugs into this community, distribute dangerous drugs on the street. Many times, Steve, those folks don't use drugs.
Right.
They have seen way too many times the results of it, and many times they do not. So the organized distribution of drugs, the true dealers, that's our target. For the folks that are in the throes of drug addiction, who are struggling with addiction, we really would rather send them to Tricia.
Very good. We've got a couple of minutes left here. What is the future of Lancaster and Fairfield County as it relates to dealing with this issue of addiction from your perspective?
I would say that if we did not have a strategy, if we weren't transparent and open about our problem, and if we weren't working collaboratively, I would say the future would be grim. It's going to be challenging, to be sure. It's not going to be easy, but with everyone working together, and that's a fact. I mean, we really do not have polarization among the groups that are dealing with this. With that level of cooperation, although very challenging, I think the future is positive.
Very good. And I think maybe we have a real opportunity to send a message to people who come to this area that says, you don't want to sell drugs in this community. If you got to do that, do it somewhere else. And part of that happens because of your leadership at the Lancaster Police Department. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for saying that, Steve. And I do want to say, just in closing, that last year there were 31 meth labs that were discovered in the city of Lancaster. Now, does that mean that we have more meth labs than anyone else? Would that mean that a city our size would have a lot less? Or no, really it doesn't. It means we're actively seeking out meth labs. We have methods to discover where they are and who's operating them, and we're making them a priority to go after them. So if you're contemplating that kind of activity in this city, in this county, expect a visit from one of the specialized law enforcement units.
Outstanding.
Yes, it is. Very good to hear.
Chief Dave Bailey, Lancaster Police Department, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for caring for our community and for the part that you do and your team in making Fairfield County a safe place to live, work, worship, and raise a family.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Tricia, the chief talked about partnership. He's partnering with the deputy in the sheriff's department and others in law enforcement and others in our community. That's a familiar theme, and it really is why there's real hope for this situation, isn't there?
It keeps coming up, and we're very grateful for all the collaboration. It
No
really is
question.
making a difference.
Thank you for joining us for Road to Recovery. Again, you can stop by the Recovery Center, 201 South Columbus Street in downtown Lancaster, or give them a call and find out the best time to meet with an individual who will provide hope and help and wholeness and healing. People who partner together with others in our community, like the Chief of Police here in Lancaster, Dave Bailey, and others who really care about our community. Again, that number 740-687-4500. Join us next week as we travel a little further down the road to recovery.
Any questions?
What kind of service plan does this come with?
Unlimited.
Can I keep my same phone number?
Absolutely.
How do I change the ringtone?
Just hook it up to your computer.
Does it have a camera? What's the warranty? Does it come in silver? Can I put my party shuffle on this? Does it have a 3.5 millimeter headset jack? You sell a lot of these?
It's the one I carry.
You ever get those phantom vibrations in your pocket?
Any questions?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Ask questions. For the 10 questions everyone should know, go to ahrq.gov.